With Steam overflowing with indie games, it can be tough to find ones that truly stand out, but Pseudoregalia is one of those rare gems. From its nostalgic art style to intricate world design to its smooth movement mechanics and engaging combat, it really checks all the boxes for a memorable experience. It's the kind of game that surprises you with just how well everything comes together. Pseudoregalia is a 3D Metroidvania that breaks away from the traditional 2D side-scrolling mold of games like Hollow Knight and Super Metroid. Instead, it introduces a third dimension to its genre, offering an experience more akin to other 3D platformers like Super Mario 64. One of its biggest strengths is its movement mechanics. Unlike other games where you start with most of your mobility options, here you begin with your basic abilities like jumping and climbing. Then, as you progress, you acquire upgrades that enhance your movement options, such as an air kick that lets you bounce off walls, a wall ride for gliding along surfaces, or a ground pound that allows you to jump higher. These upgrades not only expand your exploration, but add a lot of fun to the gameplay. Pseudoregalia throws you straight into the action with very little handholding. The opening area is basically a tutorial, guiding you through the basics like fighting enemies, simple platforming, and grabbing your first movement upgrade, the slide. But once you're through that, the world really opens up and you can go wherever you want. Progression in this game isn't handed to you on a platter. Instead, it's all about that mental checklist. You might head to one part of the castle and run into a platforming challenge you just can't get past. So you make a mental note to come back later. Then, after unlocking a new movement ability, you remember that spot you couldn't reach earlier. It's this back and forth of exploring, upgrading, and revisiting that drives the whole experience forward. Combat in Pseudoregalia, while not the game's main focus, is surprisingly solid. Most of the enemies, like the egg, tuba, and sword enemies, are pretty trivial and easy to take down. What makes the combat feel rewarding is the energy mechanic. Every time you land a hit, you gain energy, which you can then use to heal yourself. It's similar to how healing works in Hollow Knight, where being aggressive is the key to staying alive. This creates a satisfying combat loop that encourages you to keep engaging with enemies instead of playing it safe. The combat really shines against tougher foes like the night enemies and the final boss. These guys have well-telegraphed attacks, giving you windows to slip in some hits and build up your energy gauge. The strategy here is to read their moves, capitalize on openings, and keep the pressure on. Honestly, I wish more enemies in the game were like this, because it makes fights feel way more dynamic. But sadly, not everyone is bringing that level of excitement. Tuba Boy not exactly gonna wow anyone with his attack patterns. Pseudoregalia, however, needs more than just good platforming and decent combat to stand out, and luckily, its level design is just as solid as its platforming. The entire game takes place in a decayed and crumbling castle. There are broken pathways, purple haze you can't touch, blocked passages, and locked rooms. You get the idea. Every room is designed to be easily navigated with basic platforming skills, but as you collect more power-ups and unlock new movement abilities, you start to see those same rooms in a new light. Now that you can move more freely, you discover new routes and hidden areas within places you've already been. Backtracking is often debated in games, whether it's good or not, but in certain titles like Hollow Knight and Resident Evil, it's essential to the experience. Pseudoregalia is no different. When you unlock a wall ride or gain the ability to jump higher, you start to remember all the paths you've already visited and get excited about testing out your new abilities. You're eager to reach those previously inaccessible rooms or snag that upgrade you had to leave behind. Pseudoregalia also encourages creativity with how to use your abilities. Take the air kick, for example. It lets you reach areas the game might not have intended you to access just yet. The air kick was the first ability that I found, and I immediately started brute forcing every little ledge that was just out of reach. And because of my stubbornness, I mean my insane platforming skills, I was able to reach these ledges. I love the freedom this game gives you right after the tutorial. Almost every room has some way to cheese your path forward without getting soft-locked out of areas. The map layout is also easy to navigate. Each zone connects to different paths in the castle, making it simple to traverse between areas and even create your own unique shortcuts. The only downside is that the main hub is a bit too big for quick navigation, so later in the game I found myself using other zones as shortcuts instead. Honestly, a more centralized hub could have elevated the game even further, but that's just my bias for Mario 64 talking. Another issue I have is the map itself. It feels almost like an afterthought, as if someone realized, oh yeah, this is a Metroidvania, it needs a map. It's very basic. It only shows the outline of the room you're in, and while it turns green when you're inside, it doesn't pinpoint your exact location. Worse, it doesn't track upgrades you've already seen that you might need to come back for. Because of that, I ended up forgetting about a whole multiple of upgrades since the map didn't remind me where they were. I think this game could have drawn me in even more if it tracked where those upgrades were. I would have been much more motivated to 100% the game if that were the case. Even with the issues in its map, Pseudoregalia still delivers some of the best movement I've experienced in any 3D platformer. The freedom you get as soon as you finish the tutorial leads to memorable experiences that feels different each time you play. The thrill of discovery is what truly sets this game apart from others. The game's art style taps into the nostalgic N64 vibe, giving it an oddly familiar feel, even if it's your first time playing. It's like revisiting an old favorite, yet experiencing something entirely new. The low-poly graphics and vibrant colors create a sense of retro charm that blends seamlessly with modern design choices, making it feel both classic and fresh. Pseudoregalia captures the magic of an era while offering something original, comforting, familiar, yet different. So, what did you think of the game? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching.